Hey everyone, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Rumcast. Bonus episode for January of 2024. First one of the year, John. Really excited to be back again, fresh off our 100th episode. And we're actually going to do something connected to that episode and a little different than usual. I know the last episode, the 100th episode, took us a little extra time to get everything together for that. It actually came out a week late. I know some of you out there noticed that and were wondering where your new episode of the Rumcast was. So to make up for the fact that it was a week late, we're going to make this bonus episode, which are normally just for our Patreon subscribers, free for all. And doing something a little different for a bonus episode this month. We are, as we said on the 100th episode, we did 12 full interviews for it. Now, by full, they weren't as long as our typical Rumcast interviews, which are generally 60 to 90 minutes. Most of them were in the neighborhood of half an hour or so. But we are going to eventually release all those full interviews on Patreon. For this bonus episode, we're going to release one of them for everyone. And that is our interview with Ian Burrell, the Global Rum Ambassador, the co-founder of Equiano Rum, and honestly,
Mr. Seven Continents himself.
Mr. Seven Continents. Yeah, there's a new Mr. Worldwide in town, right?
Mr. Worldwide. Yeah, Mr. Rum Worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, we could have picked any episode to release to everyone, but I know Ian's had everyone's episode had segments that we wanted to put in the 100th episode, but we just had to cut down some stuff to make it all flow together, and so it didn't end up being 4 hours. Ian's had a lot of segments that we wanted to put in that we just, couldn't find the right home for. So we're really excited to release the whole thing for everyone. There's some good stuff about new things coming down the line from Equiano, actually, that's in there. A lot more on what it takes to create a viable rum brand. That was really interesting. A lot of thoughts on kind of the progress and how people talk about rum, the discussions around rum that are going on, how those are getting smarter, the state of transparency, a lot of good stuff we couldn't fit in. So I'm excited for everyone to hear the full interview, which will be coming up right after this little introduction. But as per, I feel like on most of our bonus episodes, Sean, we at least talk a little bit about rums we've been tasting recently. And you and I both tasted a very interesting rum recently that we wanted to discuss before getting to the interview with Ian. And this is a little different than usual. This was a mystery rum.
Yeah, it's a cool concept to get, a little mystery sample with the 3 question marks, like it came from the Riddler, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It had one of those notes with like the cutout magazine characters, newspaper print and stuff with it. It didn't actually. This sample came to us from a friend of the podcast, Kyle in DC. So shout out to him. But yeah, it was a fun exercise where John and I have not discussed this either. So I don't really know what John's guesses as to the identity of this mystery rum are, and he doesn't know what mine were. And another little wrinkle is that I know what the mystery rum is because I've already been through the process of guessing, discovering I was very, 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 very wrong. So this is also going to be embarrassing for me talking through this on the podcast that's going out to everyone instead
probably
of just
equally embarrassing for me after I take a guess that's going to be very, very wrong.
Don't sell me short, John.
Okay.
But so I know what this is. Kyle shared that with me. John has not had the reveal yet, so we're going to get to hear his reaction live on the podcast. But before we get to the rum's identity, I'd love to just hear what your general impressions of this rum were. Describe it a little for the people out there who can't smell, taste, or see it right now.
So it's first of all, it's quite dark in color. I would give this like a reddish hue with some age on it, clearly, because it's about the color of maple syrup is what I would say. So it's, that's where you start with it. And by the way, I should mention that I really haven't dug into this sample until right now. I literally poured it the first time just before we started talking. And so this is really
we're getting the off-the-cuff, unfiltered John Gullo reactions right now.
And what's really cool about this is you can immediately tell it's something different. It's not often that I get something that I feel is unique in a way, I guess I would say. And I'm getting uniqueness from this. Just off the nose and I've taken a little bit of a sip of it. And what I'm getting, the first nose I got, I'm just going to tell you, like, this is live reaction, like you said, was like something like apples. something along those lines, like stewed apples maybe, and now I'm getting a little bit more of like a cola, like cola notes.
I see that.
And something in the background that has a sweetness like vanilla or confectioner sugar, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm getting. And then when I went in for the palate, I'm going to do it one more time here.
So while you're doing that, I'll talk through my initial impressions of this. I quite enjoyed the nose the first time I went to it. And I'm describing the first time because this time coming back around to it now for the second time, knowing the identity of the rum, it's interesting how things have changed, which I'll talk about in a second. Okay. But I got a lot of vanilla on the nose.
Yeah.
And I also got kind of like a little bit of a nuttiness and a lot of kind of raw oak character, which I often associate with rums that have taken on age or oak characteristics quickly. And so when I combined that with the color of the rum, the first place my mind went was this is a rum that has maybe been aged in like a new barrel in like very, very hot environment in a short amount of time. And when I went into the palate, I got more of that. And I don't know if it was because that's what my expectation was off the nose, but I got like absolutely overwhelmed with vanilla on the palate the first time. So much so that I struggled to identify other things in the rum beyond that and just kind of vague, oak characteristics. Now that was my first time. My second time is very different, but I'm curious to hear now that you are chewing on it over there, what your reactions are.
I do get vanilla, but I'm not overwhelmed by it. Yeah. I'm still getting a lot of cola from it, and to the point where it's not often I get this, but sometimes if you kind of like push your tongue to the top of your palate, it feels effervescent.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's not. It's not obviously carbonated, but it almost gives you that a little bit, which I find interesting. Doesn't happen too often. So that's where I'm getting it. I'm really struggling with what a guess would be for this. Mouthfeel wise, it's not heavy. I would call this, pretty light on body. And by the way, this is not my forte, right? This is not what I do at home every night and like, let me test my skills for tasting this blind and doing it. Like, I just rum, right?
You're being judged very, very heavily right now.
This is for the one guy on YouTube that left the comment that said, stick to interviews because our palates are cringe.
Wait, I didn't see that. Someone said that?
Somebody said that, yes. You've made it, Will, when somebody on YouTube...
I didn't see that. That's great.
Yeah, so, I'm obviously not priding myself on the skills of this. But anyways, it's enjoyable. It feels like there's a little bit of sweetness there. I wouldn't be surprised if this was very mildly dosed. Right?
Okay.
Like, that kind of between 5 and 10 type of, what is it, grams per liter? I always screw it up. Because there's just a little bit of sweetness on there. Or it could have just been from the barrel. So it doesn't come off as like a really heavily sweetened rum. Yeah, so guess-wise, right? You're going to hold me to the guess?
Yeah, actually, we should hear your guess before I get into mine. Why don't we start? I can ask you some questions about it.
Okay.
First of all, how old do you think this is?
I'm going to go with the classic kind of like 8 to 10 year.
Okay. And ABV-wise, what are you thinking?
Ooh, that's a good question, actually. It's low. So 43, 40, in and around there. 45, 46 at most.
And
it feels low.
Are you thinking toward origin at all? You don't even necessarily have to get to specific distillery or country, but is there a region of rum you're feeling drawn to?
No. Well, I can cross some things out, right? I don't believe, and I could be totally wrong, but I don't believe it's Australian.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so I can cross that out. I don't pick up notes of like Mexican really in there.
Okay.
South American, I could be. It's hard to rule that out. Oh my gosh. I'm still thinking Caribbean.
What about one of the big rum producing countries,
Yeah, well that's where I was kind of leading to, is I'm still thinking Caribbean. So, Barbados, Jamaica, it doesn't taste like a Jamaica to me. So I'm going to probably say no on that. Puerto Rico. It could be. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Puerto Rico, but
All right.
I couldn't tell you really strongly why.
With that in mind, I'm gonna assume that you think it's a column still rum.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now that you're guessing aged Puerto Rican rum somewhere in the neighborhood 8 to 10 years, something like that. Not high ABV. Okay.
Yeah.
So my guess, I was texting with the person who sent us a sample, and to me it was really kind of driving me nuts because something felt a little familiar about it to me, but again, on that first tasting, it was really like overwhelming vanilla bomb to me. Mm-hmm. And I said that it tasted like a rum that took on a ton of oak in less time than you'd think, given the dark color. In that respect, it reminded me a little bit of some of those treaty oak rums, that aged in Texas in New American oak and were very dark and, were generally like 5 to 7 years old, something like that.
Right.
I just kind of got like those have a harsh oak character, and I enjoy some of those releases, but the oak is very strong, and that's what this reminded me of. But I didn't recall any of them having that intense vanilla quality. So it was like, I don't think that's what it is, but it reminds me a little bit of that. I didn't think it was Caribbean. I guessed that it was either, this sounds so stupid reading it now. I guessed that it was either from a craft distillery, a new smaller producer that hadn't been aging stuff for that long, and may have used new oak in a hot environment or something like that, or maybe a South American one. So there was something about it where I was like, it does feel kind of on the lighter side. So maybe it is, column still. So that's what I went with. And then I asked Kyle to tell me how wrong I am. And he proceeded to tell me just how wrong I was.
Okay. The only thing, you keep stressing the vanilla. The only time I can remember ever having a vanilla bomb, which I remember being more vanilla than this, was Madagascar rum called Zama, D-Z-A-M-A. Mm-hmm. And that made sense because, Madagascar is famous for their vanilla. I'm not saying this is that. It's been at least 4 years since I've tried that rum. But yeah, that's the only other example I can think of.
All right.
Okay, go ahead.
You ready for the reveal? So first of all, I'm going to tell you how old this is, because that's what the first thing that Kyle told me. It's not 8 to 10 years old.
Okay.
It's not 15 years old.
Okay.
It's not 20 years old.
Really?
And it's not 25 years old.
Really?
It's also not 30 years old.
Get out.
It's also not 40 years old.
Oh.
It's 44 years old, John. 44 years old.
44 years old. Holy crap, first of all. Wow. Basically, it's as old as I am.
Yeah, I think it was distilled in maybe 76 or sometime around there. I know it was the 70s. I forget the specific
79.
year. Okay. So, well, I don't think it was just bottled this year. So I'll tell you what it was now.
Okay.
This was from an independent bottler, the Whiskey Jury. It was bottled at cask strength of 56%
Get
ABV.
Out. No way. I want a hydrometer test or whatever it is. Not a hydrometer, an ABV test.
A hydrometer does tell you ABV. So
it does? Okay.
Yeah, you were on the right track there. And it was from an undisclosed Caribbean distillery that we do know was located in Cuba.
Oh, so I got a little close.
Oh, you did.
I got a little close.
You did. There was a piece of your answer, Puerto Rico, that is, very tied to some traditions of Cuban rum production as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit in the wheelhouse. So good job on your part. Certainly, I would give you points for being much closer than I was in my guess. So a few interesting things. I didn't guess the ABV. I don't think I would have guessed quite as high as 56%, but I do think knowing the age, that makes a little bit more sense to me, because I think when you have that long of age, rums to me that I've had that are very old tend to drink underneath their proof a little bit. Yeah. So I don't really fault you for that.
That makes sense.
The interesting thing for me is, we talk about the experience from trying a rum the first time to the second time, sometimes varying wildly, you know?
Yeah.
And I try not to base my impressions of a rum off just that initial tasting. However, I did deliver my guess off of just one initial tasting. And now some of my initial impressions I still do get a lot of vanilla from this rum. I've gotten more stuff out of it. Like I'm getting more raisins and a little bit more fruity character out of the rum this time around than I did beforehand.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of the change has to do with me knowing the identity of the rum. And because I feel like when your brain knows certain information about something, it almost subconsciously is going to expect different things, which I do think impacts your experience of tasting it. Yeah. Having said that, I kept asking myself the question of, do I like this rum? And my answer after the first tasting was an emphatic no. I thought it was tasting on borderline artificial vanilla flavor. I thought that the finish was really short.
Very short. It's almost non-existent.
And almost just like vanilla and some like raw oak characteristics, almost like sawdust kind of, oak quality. Not the kind of oak characteristics that I really associate with really long, well-aged rums. And now, having said all that, my second tasting here, it's improved some. It's not just vanilla turned up to 11 in my face. Like I said, there's other things I'm getting. That said, the finish to me is still really short and not what I would have expected from a 44-year-old rum. And to me, that's the most disappointing thing about it, is that the finish just kind of dies and it doesn't really, nothing really unfolds from it. There's little complexity in it to me. And that part of my analysis has remained the same, despite the identity revealing just how wrong I was about this rum.
Yeah, but what it is there is pleasant. I'm less sensitive to oak influence than you are, generally, I think. I think I feel qualified to say that after this many years. And so to me, I enjoy that overall palate of this rum. But I would agree 100%, even knowing now that this is in the 50s for ABV and having a finish that quick is, kind of a letdown. There's something I've mentioned before. I wish I could put a finer point on it, but now that you've mentioned this is a long age rum, when I go in and smell the glass, I now get that kind of thing that, when you file things in your brain, like this now falls under that, oh yeah, there's that like really long, musty, oaky kind of aged smell that you get. Not in every case, but the only place I've ever found it is from those long aged rums when it is present. So it's
walking
not
into
every
an old library.
Rum. Yeah. Right, exactly.
You don't have to agree to that. I was just kidding.
I think it is. I think that's kind of where it is, or like an old closet or something, and it is there here. So then I'm kind of mad that I missed that before the reveal. But I will say, overall, I like the rum. Would I pay an exorbitant price for it? No. But it's a fine pour.
Well, this was a fun exercise, and I enjoyed, sharing not only with you, but all the people out there, just how wrong I can be about blind tasting. So an adventure for sure. But with that out of the way, we're going to take a quick break and then get right over to the full interview from our 100th episode with Mr. Ian Burrell. So, Ian, we will start with kind of we'll look past and then we'll look forward and then we'll do our Ian questions, but kind of looking back at the last 4 or 5 years in rum. So since, 2019, 2018-ish, when you look back at that, what kind of stands out to you as either some sort of noteworthy development, a change, a directional trend or something that you think really kind of captures that time period in rum or just stands out as being noteworthy or important in some way?
I think for me, the transparency and the understanding of rum, there's more questions being asked by consumers. And a lot of that has to do with, of course, the world slowed down during COVID. So there's a lot more time for people to do more research on what they were buying, what they were drinking, asking more questions. Rum as a category, as you know, has been taken for granted and taken advantage of by certain brands, certain companies, because of the unclear defining rules of what rum exactly is in the context of Scotch whiskey and American whiskey. And I say that because when we default to rum has no rules and they compare it to Scotch whiskey and American whiskey, we're talking about two regions in the world, where if you actually break it down, rum actually has more defining rules by country of origin than whiskey does globally. So but people are now asking questions, making comparisons, of course, but the good thing is I'm seeing a lot more people comparing apples with apples as opposed to apples and pears. So they're not saying, oh, this pot still rum from Venezuela has got no body, no esters, no funk. And I'm like, what are you comparing it to? I'm comparing it to a Hamden, which is made completely different. Yes, they use batch distillation, but it's a different piece of equipment, different types of fermentation made in a different country with a different set of rules. And that's like comparing, as I said, that's like comparing a bourbon to a Scotch whiskey. So we're seeing more people ask these questions, defining rums for their own personal taste and personal palate. And that's great for the category because it means that people can find their own lane, find their own niche within the rum category. And there's room for everyone to do all types of rums, just as long as we know exactly what's in the bottle, deciphering the label and understanding what we have even before we jump into a glass. But I'm seeing a lot more of that, especially in the last 5 years. And that's been one of the most rewarding parts of the industry I've seen globally. Other than that, it's new regions. It's new regions getting back into rums or just getting into rums on an international perspective. I love seeing the continent of Africa now starting to make a little bit of noise with rums coming out of one of the various countries out there. And we'll see a lot more in the near future. So a lot of that has started in the last 5 years. So, yeah, it's just rums from unknown or uncharted territories that's exciting me.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go against the outline I laid out at the beginning, and I want to ask a question specifically about you because you were mentioning Africa, and you've been a part of bringing some of that African rum to the forefront with the Mauritius portion of the Equiano blend. And I think this last 4 or 5 years of rum has been a really interesting time in terms of new brands coming on the market, very distinctive new brands coming on the market. Yeah. So based on kind of your experience, you've come a long way in a short period of time with Equiano. I'm sure there have been lots of surprises, lessons, things to learn the way. What do you think are kind of the biggest challenges for new rum brands right now that will kind of continue to be part of the story as we go into the next 5 years or so?
I think part of the biggest challenge is to first of all, is to understand and know your audience. I get, as an ambassador, I get a lot of different companies contact me pretty much, I would say daily, but definitely by the week or by the month of new brands that want to launch and want to do this. And the first thing I ask them is, who is your target audience? And they can't really define who their audience are. They don't know if they want to try to create something for the general public, where they want something much more sweeter and lighter and easily used in a cocktail and want to do volume, or do they want something niche? Do they want to go for that small geeky type of target audience that want to talk about esters and how the barrel was aged and what is the dress size of the master blender and the master distiller? What type of rum do they want to create? Because once they define that, then that journey is a little bit easier. It's not going to be easy, but a little bit easier. So that is probably the biggest challenge because I've seen a lot of brands launch and they don't know what they want. They don't know which direction they want to go to. And because there are so many different styles of rums, it's quite hard to actually pigeonhole yourself into a particular category, especially if you're from a new area. I mean, if there's a new distillery being built, for example, in Barbados, now they're probably going to default to some of the more successful Barbados rums in recent times. So they probably have products very similar to a Foursquare or similar to a Mount Gay, just because of the fact that's the reason why they build it on Barbados. If I was going to build a distillery in Jamaica, I want a little bit of that Jamaica funk inside there, like the Hamdens, but I also want some of that commercial flavor profile that Appleton have as well. So you don't want to go too extreme when you come with flavor profiles. So it's understanding your audience, and I think that's the biggest challenge that some of the brands will have. Once they define that, it becomes a little bit easier.
What do you see the audience of Equiano as? Because when I'm just thinking about it, I have my assumptions, and I feel like you could go a few different directions with it. Because to me, it's I don't want to answer the question,
Correct.
so I'll leave it to you.
100% correct. 100% correct. One of the things I always say about rums like Equiano, I say it's a rum for the many and not for the few. Just because I want as many people to try and taste rums like Equiano, not only my rum, but other rums of that ilk. Mm-hmm. When I break down the rum drinking audience around the world, I go 1, 90, and 90. I have that 1% that are the ultra geeks, and they do want certain casts and certain styles of products, but they're only 1% of that world market. Then you have the 9%, which are the influencers. Now, these people will go online, they will do their research, they will brand call when they go into a bar, they will have their rums with their favorite mixers. Someone might have the regular person might have the basic rum, but they're gonna ask for the 12-year-old or the XO. They're actually going to specifically call for a brand, but not as geeky, ultra geeky as
they're in the know. They're in the know, but they're not all the way. Yeah.
Correct. And then you have the 90%, which makes up a majority of the rum drinking populace in the world. And a lot of those, for example, still will equate a spice rum to a rum. They don't know the difference as such. Now, they're just on a different journey, a different rum journey from, say, the 9% and that 1%. And a lot of that higher percentage did start off drinking the flavored rums, the spiced rums, the sweetened rums as such. So with Equiano, I tried to create it initially for that 9%. We were going to be a little bit higher than someone who would automatically say, well, I don't like Equiano because it's not sweet enough. It's a sweet rum. It's a naturally sweet rum, but it hasn't been sweetened. But it's only 43% alcohol by volume. I say only 43 because in the States, as you know, to be a rum, you have to be at least 80 proof. Equiano is 86 proof. But if we're going to the ultra geeks now, they want cask strength. It can't be anything less than 120 proof, 109, 118 proof as such. So it's not going to go Equiano as a general brand. It's not going up to that level. So it's in between. It can be sipped by itself. It can be drunk with ice. I wouldn't recommend putting water in there. And the only reason why, because it's already diluted to 43%.
Right.
Already.
You found the sweet spot.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I actually put a bit of water in some of my rums are if they're cask strengths. And sometimes that may be only in the Caribbean where it may be a bit more dry. The heat may be dry or a bit of humidity in the air. And I just try to open up a little bit more. Other than that, the blenders and the distillers, they've watered it down to 60 to 50 to 45. That's what they want you to drink it at. They've already put enough water inside there. But that's just my own personal preference. Equiano is for that 9%, the rum for the many and not for the few.
Here's to hoping we can make that 9% at least an 18%, right? Let's double it. Let's get 2, 18, and 80. Wait, is my math right? I think so. But
well, we are, and funny enough, our next Equiano release, which is actually on the waters at the moment in Atlantic Ocean coming from Barbados, is actually 52% ABV. So it will venture into that 1%. And that's because it's a limited edition blending that we're going to be doing on a regular basis. So that's going to be the first of what we call our exceptional blends at 52% ABV. But there's more of a story behind why it's 52% and the vintages that Richard Seals used in that blend.
Oh, can't wait for that. That's exciting.
You guys will be getting some samples. Don't worry.
Ooh, sweet.
Music to our ears.
Will, I know we're a little off script, but I want to ask something before we go to the future. So, Ian, with you being a leading rum educator and all of what you've already said in response to the other questions, has your methods or methodology of how you talk to people in rum events changed over that time in with regards to all of the things you mentioned?
Yeah, it has. As I said, there's a lot more knowledgeable people, which is great. You don't have to basically dumb down the conversation when we're talking about rums. Also, the good thing about it is people understanding where rum has actually come from, having conversations about enslaved Africans that were making the rum at a particular time, where when we were first taught about rums, they were never really spoken about. In fact, the only time they came up in reference is like, oh yeah, they drank molasses and they drank fermented molasses, and as opposed to them actually making the rums and being the distillers and being the blenders at a particular time, because it's arduous work. So they were the ones making the rums, but not getting the credit. So it's I'm glad, and it's nice to see people speak about what's going enslaved Africans in that respect in the history of rum as part of the conversation. So yeah, so it's how I speak about rum in a lot in the recent times has changed completely compared to how I was speaking about rum 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I'm still learning about the category. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, you're the most knowledgeable person in rum." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I just know a little tiny bit more than most, but I'm still learning every single day about the category of rum because it's so fascinating and intriguing."
Yeah, it's really a never-ending education, I feel like, especially because it comes from so many parts of the world and so many different cultures. It's like, how can you possibly claim to understand all of it, you know?
Exactly.
It takes several lifetimes to master it all, I feel like.
I mean, one of the bucket list trips I have to make is to Nepal. Because there's a distillery there. They've been making rum since the 1930s, importing molasses from India. And it's a traditional rum for Nepal, but the bottle, the coronation bottle, was shaped like a dagger, the kukri, which again was historically connected to the British and the Burkas, and they used to have it in their little sashes. But they got a rum like that, and so that's one of my destinations. One of the places I have to go to. I want to go and see the Kukri guys in Nepal, just to see how they make the rums. And again, it's going to be different from rums from India, let alone other parts of Asia, and definitely different from rums from the Americas.
If you need a guide, we know. I don't know Nepalese right now, but I'll learn.
There we go.
I was going to say there's 100 different independent bottlers now booking their flights to Nepal, hearing you talk about that. Also, I think it's great that the man who has sipped rum in Antarctica still has a bucket list rum destination.
That was quite funny. Sipping rums, doing master classes down there. It was wow. That was definitely the most beautiful place I've ever been to on the planet. But
wow,
it was intriguing. I've actually done it twice now, which is really scary. Yeah, I went back in 2013. I actually posted a video on YouTube where I'm making a grog going over the Drake's Passage, and it was so cold and so windy. I had to have the cocktail shaker at one side and the bottle at another, and the wind blew the liquid from an angle into the shaker. I didn't even have to pour it over it. It was just so cold. I didn't even need ice. My hands was frozen. It was like a penguin shaker. But, just doing
it shakes automatically because your hand is already shaking something.
It was so cold. Yeah, I couldn't even let go because it stuck to my hands. But just having what's called rum, lime, sugar, and water on a ship going over the Drake's Passage. Something that Sir Francis Drake would have probably have done back in the 1500s. I didn't have any mint on me, or I'd have made it El Drake, named after Francis Drake, the precursor to the mojito. But that was the nearest I could get to like a naval type of drink going over Drake's Passage. But it's such an amazing place. But to have rum on 7 continents is for me just so rewarding for myself, and helps me infuse even more people to want to travel and try rums in different parts of the world.
Yeah, John and I have some catching up to do for sure.
Yeah. I was going to say, speaking of rum on different continents also, you would be one of the people that would definitely have experience enough to know, like, where is the U.S. in relation to maybe Europe, especially now as compared to maybe a few years ago?
As in rum making or drinking? Because if it's drinking, they're kicking butt. It helps when you can buy rum very, very cheap in the continent, and so you have lots of volume. If we're talking about making rums, there's been a few distilleries that I've seen of late, or recently, I should say, that are popping up there and making rums. And you've got the craft distillery movement, not only making whiskeys but also getting into rums because it's becoming so popular. I mean, I remember when Maggie Campbell was down, what's called Privateer. I was like, that was probably one of my biggest regrets, not to see Maggie in Massachusetts making old Boston, New England style rums out there, because I would have loved to try to roll back the years. I won't go not that far, but trying to taste rums. Maybe that tasted like New England rums from back in the days. And then you go down in the South and you go to somewhere like Louisiana that have all that sugar cane and the history of making rum and spirits down there, and a few distilleries down there doing their style. as well. Of course, Florida, seeing a couple of brands, a couple of rums come out of Florida. But it's good to see some of these craft distillers using local cane or local molasses, making rum, and then trying to create their own little nuance, their own little profile, and establish maybe, which I'd love to see, a genuine mainland American rum industry. Because when we think of the US and we think of rums, it's always rums from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands that really take over all the figures, and they're missing straight in certain ways, because, as you know, that rum has been made for peanuts, especially with a cover over tax, where you're getting money back for making rum so you can sell it for cheap at the end of the day. So, but I'm seeing some really interesting brands come to the States, and I think that we'll see some in a few years' time. We'll see some incredible brands. I wouldn't say trying to take on the Caribbeans, because we do it best, but turning our heads to say, this is not bad. I see where you're going with that. I like that.
That's always my a piece of advice if I'm ever asked by American craft distillers is don't compare yourselves to the Caribbean. Yeah. I know it's tempting, but just do your own thing. Don't we don't need the compare and contrast. Just do your own thing. Do your
own thing. Yes, great advice. That is great advice. Yeah, just do your own thing, and if it tastes good, then I think one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite rum makers was, he just said, "I'm just going to make rum that I enjoy."
Yeah,
that means if other people have a similar palate, they're going to enjoy it as well.
Yeah,
rum that you enjoy.
I'm just going to drink rum that I enjoy.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Ian. So we've kind of talked about the recent history. Looking ahead, if rum enthusiasts or imagine rum enthusiasts sitting there 4 or 5 years from now, what do you think are going to be some things that they're noticing at that time that are different from the rum world we are living in currently?
Crystal ball time. You'll definitely see a few new brands and distilleries popping up in traditional rum producing countries, just because of the fact that rum is growing at an alarming rate. But there's also more money now for investment, because people are thinking, well, you know what, if we're making all this money, all that money is being made on whiskey and other craft spirits, why can't we do it on the category that everyone said is the next big thing, is the fastest growing? So you're going to see a lot more rum brands, new rum brands. And again, it's a good thing and a bad thing, because you're going to see some good rum brands, and unfortunately you're going to see some bad rum brands as well, muddying the waters. So it's going to be just trying to peel away those layers. There's going to be a lot more products out there for people to try, taste at various different rum fairs and rum events. And that's what we're going to see in the future. More rum brands, better rum brands than today. But also, unfortunately, some really, what I like to say, charlatans cutting corners just to try to get that taste profile, and also take advantage of the popularity of rum. And then also, of course, I touched upon it a little bit earlier, rums coming from new territories that are not really known for rums. I mentioned Africa as a continent. I was recently, about 3 months ago, at a distillery in Ghana. And they will be this year launching their first 3-year-old rum. So in 5 years' time, that's going to be an 8-year rum. And what I've tasted from their unaged and their 3-year-old when I was there, it's beautiful. So just seeing these distilleries grow and seeing that timeline, and we can now trace that because we're opening our eyes to see that. There's a lot of people that we probably know that wish they could have anticipated, for example, someone like a Foursquare, wish that they were around in 2007 and say, let me buy up all this because I know in 10 years' time, this is going to be even better and absolutely amazing. It's going to be collector's item. But we didn't have the foresight. Now we have that part of that foresight. We're now looking for the next big thing. What is going to be the next new Jamaica rum? Is there going to be a new distillery built out there? We know of one, possibly two, in Barbados. The Grenadans, we have Renegade in Grenada doing some great, as they call, pre-casks, but now they're aging some of that. So we can see that timeline of how these rums are growing. That's exciting part of the next 5 years, just seeing how the rums that are doing really well now, how they developed 5 years later, and how they follow in that trajectory.
There's such a great point. There are many great points in there, but one of the things that you're touching on is something I've been thinking about a lot lately too, which is we think so much about rums from new places, right? Which is going to be, that's absolutely happening, and that's going to be a big thing. But the other thing is going to be new distilleries in old rum making places, which is really exciting. Much like the Barbados example you mentioned and the Renegade example, there are several. I think we're going to see much more of those, and I think we're going to see increasingly like very like Renegade, the Barbados project. Those aren't just like little like, oh, let's open it. Like that's major investment,
major.
like huge undertaking. So it's really exciting to me. I hope we keep getting more of those.
Long-term investments. But you will see some of these small little boutique ones as well. And that's also exciting. If you are going to do something craft, why not do it inside a place where you know you have ample sugarcane growing? You've got a great environment to tropically age and tropically mature your product. So you will see some boutique places trying to keep my lips closed. But in islands of the Caribbean that may not have any distilleries at the moment, but they are looking and probably will be getting some small little tiny boutique hybrid stills where they can just create their own little legacy. But it's exciting to see the Caribbean doing that.
I just had a drink a couple of months ago with a distiller who works for an American rum distillery who is working with some local people in Dominica on starting a distillery there. All cane juice. And it's a really exciting project. And like, it's not secret or anything, but they haven't released their first rum yet. And I think people are going to be seeing that, but that's another example. Man, we could talk all day. I have one more question, and then John, I wanted to see if you had anything. But to circle back a little bit to transparency, I thought you made some really good points on the progress there. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was just how do you assess kind of like maybe how happy are you with where we currently are with transparency, and what are the major mile markers you're hoping to see in the coming years? Because I know you've really been kind of at the forefront of the GI conversation, very active and posting about that. What are kind of your expectations between that and transparency and everything? What are you expecting to see or hoping to see in the next 4 or 5 years?
In regards to the GI, we'll start with that part, the GI conversation. I am 1000% for any country, any area or territory that wants to try to attain and get a GI to protect themselves and to protect themselves from some of the undesirable rum companies that are out there, or organizations out there that just basically want to take advantage, or try and use a colonial model where it's like, we'll just take from our colonies and then create the value abroad in the Western society or the Western world. So I'm definitely against that, because again, we've come a long way from 400 years ago, 300 years ago, 200 years ago to be stuck in that same mindset of let's just take from, say, just for example, the Caribbean, bring it to Europe and create the value inside Europe. So that's one thing. So I'm always for any country that does the GI. I've been working with countries like Madeira, for example, islands of Madeira, to enforce that. They've got their own GI, but they've been enforcing that around Europe, and then eventually, hopefully, in America, where they come in there, and legally in Europe, it's one of the only areas that are allowed to use the word rum agricole, for example, Madeira. I initially started working with Mauritius back in 2008, trying to get the distilleries working together to create a Mauritian GI. That's taking a little bit longer, but again, those conversations are starting. And then, of course, we have the Caribbean, the established island. Jamaica has theirs. Barbados is fighting to create theirs at the moment. And if they don't get an official GI, they'll just create a trademark that has to be used to define what you are. But the reason why things like that are important is for the transparency conversation. If I said to you, I'm going to drink this single malt Scotch whiskey from, and no disrespect to Afghanistan, but Afghanistan. And the reason why I say that is because we may have preconceptions of what Afghanistan is as a country when it comes to making spirits, but we have no idea what that single malt whiskey is going to be like. From there, it could be good, it could be bad. We have no idea. But if I said a single malt Scotch whiskey, you have a prejudice or prejudgment of what that whiskey potentially could be like. It's also transparent because you know the rules and regulations of that particular region. You know it's not going to have any sugar in there. You know it's going to be aged for a minimum of 3 years. You know it's going to be pot stilled. You know it's going to be from a single distillery. That's what we want in rum, and that's where the transparency comes in. If I see a rum from an area that I don't know, I'm not expecting them to be transparent. Yeah. If they put an age claim on there and then they stick maybe Solera on there and that type of thing, then I'm not sure as a consumer. I'm not even sure as someone who drinks a lot of rum what's actually inside that bottle. I have to believe what they say. But if they're from an area where their region is protected and those laws are enforced, I now pretty much 99.9% reoccurring believe them. If something's from Jamaica and it's aged a certain way, or it's got a minimum age statement on there, I know it's that age because it's protected. They're transparent through their GI. So I rely on the rules and regulations of that particular territory to tell me what's in that bottle, even before I get into the bottle and then say, oh, it's too strong for me. But at least the transparency is their label, is the protection that they have for their geography. So that's what I'd love to see more of in the future in regards to transparency, because when it comes to being transparent, anyone can put anything on their label and see if they can get away with it. It's whether they get caught up or whether the region where they're trying to copy is protected, or whether the lawyers get involved to basically say, oh, you're not a premium product, or you're not really respected. You're not really endorsing Michael Jordan's number because because you don't really have a Michael Jordan system of making rum inside your particular country. Which is why there's a court case going on at the moment. So anyway, I can't say too much. There's a court case going on.
Best we've got is a Glen Rice.
Yeah.
Well,
did Glen Rice win that number as well? I can't remember.
I'm just a Heat fan, that's all.
All right, okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I hear you. But yeah, so that's the whole transparency conversation. Yes, we'd love people to tell us what's inside the bottle more and more, but if there is that safety net of an enforceable geographical indication protection, a PDO, or any form of label that someone could look at and say, right, that rum is this, that rum is that, it's made this particular way, that then helps us understand the rum even before we get into the bottle. Then we can peel away the layers and say, does it taste good, or is it too woody, or is it too heavy, or is it not woody enough? It's not. Then we're comparing apples and apples and not apples and pears. And that's a long answer, but it's a passionate answer.
Well, I saved the easy questions for the end. So, no, we try to ask questions that well, I don't say we try, but we often end up asking questions that it's hard to give a 30-second answer to. So,
yeah.
But yeah. John, did you have anything else? We good?
No, I'm good. I think we got excellent. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Pleasure to talk to you guys as well. Yeah.
We could keep going and going.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you were hoping to touch on that we didn't get to?
Let's see. Nothing much. It's just, onwards and forward with rum as a category. As I said, the more and more people that go to events around the world to sample and taste rums with the rum makers, the ambassadors, and other people, the same type of mindset, the better it is for the rum category. So yes, we will see more rum events. There are a couple that are going to be in your shores quite soon as well. But yeah, it's yes. I just think that the rum industry is the best industry in the world. I'm a little bit biased because, as you know, I had my first sip when I was about 4 days old as a Jamaican. So I'm a little bit more school. I had that in my blood as such. And then the cultural aspects of rum, again, is something I resonate with because I've studied and I'm still studying a lot of where rum is from. Obviously, we love to talk about where rum is today, and as we touch upon where rum is going in the future. So, yeah, so let's just drink some great rums out there and keep these conversations going and help the industry, because it's an important part of the economy for a lot of, as we call, developing countries. When people say, "Oh yeah, but rum is dangerous," I'm like, yeah, it's the most dangerous drug in the world. It's because it's alcohol. Alcohol is the most dangerous drug in the world. But if it's used wisely and moderately, it can still be an important income resource for a lot of countries, which is why you're seeing certain countries now using rum and these conversations in their manifestos for running for parliament or running for government. So so watch that space as well.
Love it. All right, Ian, we'll let you get back to enjoying your Sunday evening. But cheers. Thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. It's always great to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to another bonus episode of the Rumcast. As we said, we will be releasing all of the rest of these full interviews over the next couple of months, probably, to our Patreon subscribers. If you are interested in coming along for the ride, getting more bonus episodes, you can go to patreon.com/therumcast. That's patreon.com/therumcast. Or if you just have thoughts, reactions, comments, requests, criticisms, whatever, you can email us at host@rumcast.com. That's host@rumcast.com. Or you can find us on social media. John, same places as always. Where can they find us?
Oh, social media is so cringe now, Will. It's so cringe. That's what my
a lot of it is.
Daughters would say.
A lot of it is.
No, it's a way we can connect, and so we still utilize many of those platforms.
Okay, Mr.
Twitter.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, that's right. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We are on all of those platforms, and we eventually will slide into the DMs if you send us one, and we'll text you back with it, or leave a comment on any of those platforms. Lots of people commenting on the 100th episode. That was cool to see. We really appreciate the feedback, of course. And I'm looking forward to releasing more of these, and then eventually we get the hooking a cut. Right? You're gonna just stitch them all together, and we'll have the 4.5 hour one. We'll release it as a set. Like La Maison and Vellier, right? Yeah. Which I still, by the way, I can't say Vellier. I noticed it. Like I say Vellia.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of get to the R and I just bail.
I'm not sure what to do with
committing to one thing or the other. Yeah, that's just the American in me, I guess.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Let us know what you think, and we'll be back soon with a regular episode. We'll be back very soon with it. We're looking forward to it. It's a good one. So see you soon.
Cheers.